Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Yahweh, Bashem Yahweh Shai, Bashem Kakadash, double honors and salutations to the elders and apostles of Great Stone, to the Akim Alpha throughout the four corners of the earth, holding on sincerity and in truth to the gospel of the Mashiach Yahweh Shai, these days and times, with diligence of mind, is Blamanasha, DC Camp, short lesson for the hopeful elect. So you see on the screen, man, the TSA has been authorized by the United States government, all right, Congress, to apply a fee for not having your so-called passport or real ID when trying to board the flight at the airport. And it's just one of those things you just have to constantly be aware of, that the elites will continue to build that fence of digital captivity around the masses. All right, so they'll do whatever they can to force compliance. So they were proposing a fee of $18 for not having a passport or a real ID when you're going through screening. All that is just another proof that the serpent is not going to relinquish his power, when people demand freedom of travel and all that stuff. So ever since Esau had to orchestrate 9/11, this is what has been part of the layers of shackles they've been adding, to the people's daily lives, man. So you just have to be aware of what's going on. You could look up the article online. This is from the Federal Register. So it says the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, is launching a modernized alternative identity verification program for individuals who present at the TSA checkpoint. All right. Without the required acceptable form of identification, such as a real ID or passport. So your driver's license is no longer sufficient. All right, the same old driver's license they've issued that you paid for is no longer valid. Now they want you to get a so-called real ID, which you still have to pay for again. And just like the same old drama that we saw in Utah, saying that the people have a right to a digital ID. They can opt in and opt out. I'm like, come on, man. It's just hilarious. When they passed to Obamacare, what did they do, man? They're trying to force people. To force people to get, to get health care, man. And then the Supreme Court said, oh, well, it's okay, the government has a point, it's all legal, it's a tax, and blah, 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 blah. And then the IRS has to also enforce it. They get fined for every year you don't have insurance and all that stuff. So that's the sad part, if you're self-employed, you have to have insurance. That's just a hilarious part. They have to force people into the system. Okay, and you can't opt out. So that's the ridiculous part of this captivity we have in Babylon, man. It's always chaos. All right, so Let's see what else it says. It says the modernized program provides an alternative that may allow these individuals to gain access to the sterile area of an airport if TSA is able to establish their identity to address the government's incurred costs. Individuals who choose to use a TSA modernized alternative identity verification program will be required to pay an $18 fee. So I was looking at this news article online. It said if you have to go through some biometric screening since you don't have a passport or a real ID. So they got to have to charge you $18 for the biometric screening. Oh boy! So that's just how horrible the system is, man. When the system is crumbling and elites want to force compliance, this is one of the tactics they use, man. They have to attach a fee to it. They have to touch the people's pockets, And very soon, man, they're gonna have to move on to the next stage because they've done everything in their power at the initial stages to bring all this chaos, all right, to the forefront. But hey, it's all part of prophecy. So it says pay an $18 fee or participation, all right, in the modernized alternative identity verification program. All right, so it says optional and does not guarantee an individual will be granted access to the sterile area of an airport. So that's just the drama. So effective today, November 2025. All right, so you could look online and look at that news article. So this is what Congress has authorized TSA to do, man. Whatever power TSA has is derived from the so-called congressmen. They can only do what Congress tells them to do. So that's what's going on. When the Congress has been captured by the so-called corporate elites, they're gonna have to push all these digital forms of identification. You have to verify your identity before you could go online and all that stuff. It's one of the reasons they have to push, the so-called CBDC or stable coins or all that cryptocurrency stuff. So it's just, another brick in the wall of Babylon's, prison yard. All right. So I'll get a quick precept. It's going to be from the book of Habakkuk. Habakkuk chapter 2. All right. Chapter 2, I'm going to read verse 1 to verse 3. It says, I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower and will watch to see what he will say unto me and what I shall answer when I am reproved. All right. So the Lord has to, check, his servants. The Lord has to, what you call it, chasten the servants of his of his vineyard. All right. You have to go through that verification process, man. The Most High has to check you out to make sure you're on point, to make sure you get the job done as He has requested. So you have to, have the fear of the Lord. And the Lord, has answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. Okay, so it has to be easily understood. All right, the words of prophecy for those it is intended for. All right. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. So just like, the apostles have been talking about this for years, they're going to have to implement all this, implement all this drama to force the people into the so-called MOTB framework. All right. So you just have to understand, man. In captivity, this is the farthest you can ever be. Just get your so-called real ID. All that stuff, man. Because you can't go into a government building without the real ID, especially if you have a contract and all that stuff, man. Even some school systems, say, okay, well, you can't come into the building unless you have a real ID and all that stuff. So this is exactly what you have to prepare for. You cannot ignore it. This is necessary for you to know, and then we get to know that scripture, because the journeys of a man, as you've been traveling, during your time in the truth, and before you woke up as an Israelite, you already knew that traveling is an essential activity of a man's life. And when you know that it's going to be interrupted, you have to start preparing yourself spiritually, man, not to get attached to your lusts. All right, not every business opportunity is going to be worth it. It's not worth it in the future because of the headaches that will come with it. All right. So the book of Sirach, chapter 34, verse 9, it says, "A man that hath traveled knoweth many things, and he that hath much experience will declare wisdom." Then the scripture also tells you that with much wisdom comes more grief. All right, you get to see what are the problems that is wrong with society, and then you'll be able to make a decision how you're going to proceed further. Now, verse 10 says, "He that hath no experience knoweth little, but he that hath traveled is full of prudence." So you know exactly what the culture is in different regions that you travel to. You understand the architecture, you understand the dynamics of the people, all that stuff, man. You understand the different laws and regulations and policies. You are able to look for your opportunities without getting yourself into any trouble over your course, over your journey. All right. Verse 11, "When I traveled, I saw many things, and I understand more than I can express." So, as a man of the Lord, man, there'll be times when you're going to travel, and you have to apply what you've learned from the scriptures to your understanding, so that you could see further, you can understand more the manners of the ruling elite in these different states. All right, because you have layers of rulers. All right, there are different layers of rulers, and they like certain things done a certain way. So you could look at the way they run the so-called local governments, the so-called state government, and then you understand, how to approach the situation, and whatever profits you can get, if it's part of your so-called livelihood, you just do it without throwing your integrity away. All right. So that's one of the benefits of traveling. But at a certain point in time, you have to walk away, man. In the time of Jacob's trouble, in your hour of temptation, you're gonna have to let it go. Because of your salvation is worth more than a so-called opportunity, from our government. If you're doing business with the government, you're getting government contracts, you're a subcontractor, you have to be aware, man, that at some point in time, you have to walk away, man. You have to start preparing your other alternatives, so you have to protect yourself. You don't want to get caught lacking without the proper knowledge. So Ecclesiastes chapter 9 verse 10 tells you, "Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might, for there is no work, no device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest." So whatever opportunity the Lord has given to you, man. As long as you have the breath of life in you, you have to implement it, man. You have to put it into practice because of, you don't want to be thrown about like a ping pong ball, man. Smacked back and forth. Going from one employer to the next when things are shutting down. You could see the the countenance of these federal workers when they had a government shutdown, when they had to stand in line just to get daily sustenance. You could see that their confidence had been shattered. You could see the tears in their eyes. You could see the sadness. You could see the pain. So you just have to prepare ahead of time, and it's just an opportunity from the Lord that you prepare, man. Don't get comfortable. Don't be complacent, man. In a position, on the plantation, man. Because when that rug gets pulled, you see people's reaction. They get nervous. They start talking about unaliving themselves, man. All type of crazy thoughts come in their mind. When they are not properly anchored to Yahbashima, Shahabashima, Kakadash. So you need to realize, man, you got to prepare yourself ahead of time so you don't fall, to the weakness of the flesh. All right. So Proverbs chapter 18, verse 15, it says, "The heart of the prudent getteth knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeketh knowledge." So you do your research, before before you head on out, man. Before you travel, you have to look at the requirements, man. What you can bring on board and all that stuff. The type of clothing you have to wear, depending on the weather. What you do when you come in contact with all these law enforcement, all that stuff, man. What you do when they have like a so-called holiday, where to go and where not to go. The neighborhoods to avoid. You have to maximize the the benefits you can get out of the knowledge you have. You don't want to throw away your your, uh, your limited time, to an unfruitful endeavor. So you want to get the best result for the effort you put out there when you travel. You don't want to go to a place where you're going to get sick drinking the the water. If you know the service of that restaurant is not on par, why do you want to keep on going there? If you know the roads are bad, why do you still want to, reside in that location? First time is enough. So you have to make adjustments. You got to treat your life as a business. You have to know the costs and know the what you call the expenditure and what's and your gains. Assets and liabilities. You have to know what that is, man. That's what a man's life has to take account for, man. You have certain habits that are an asset to you. You have to capitalize on it. And if you have a habit that's a liability, you have to minimize it as much as possible continuously. All right. So you're able to avoid all these traps. You don't want to get caught in a trap of Esau. So we get another scripture. It's going to be from the book of Baruch chapter 3, and then verse 8. All right. So remember, man, modern alternative identity verification user fee. All right. So this is what it is, man. Every time you go through the system and you don't have your passport, or your so-called real ID, and you go through a so-called security screening, or you choose not to, you gotta keep on paying that fee until they say, you know what, enough is enough. you gotta get a real ID. If you don't have it, one will be provided to you on the spot. That's just what happens, man. Because it's so-called TSA, they have access to all your information. You know, but you can imagine because they're part of Homeland Security, so they could give you a real ID on the spot. All they have to do is just get the machine. You know, they get your picture. That's it. If not, if you don't want to take a picture, they can always pull it up from your driver's license and they give you a real ID on the spot. That's what it is, man. Whether you pay for it or you don't pay for it, they can give you one on the spot, and that's what they're going to do very soon. just imagine that. Yeah, so it's just how it is. They have to force people into compliance. That's just what it is. They say you have a right to get a real ID. Just like folks that go to court and say, oh, well, you're gonna appoint a lawyer, a public defender for them. Hey, the same reason they're gonna use. They have to give you one, whether you like it or not. In fact, whether you like it or not, they've already created a digital ID for you. It's already waiting. All you gotta do is just take it. So that's just what happens, man. So as long as you don't go along with the MOTB, that's just what it is, man. Don't be excited about taking the mark of the beast, man. The microchip, man. That's a no-go zone, man. That's a compliance you have to avoid with all your heart, strength, and mind. All right. So Baruch chapter 3 verse 8 says, "Behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us." So that's what's going on with our people, the Israelites. Wherever we go now, we have to get, a so-called digital ID or some form of identification to travel. For a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments according to all the iniquities of our fathers, which departed from the Lord our power. So this is just a reflection of the Most High, chastising his people. You have to deal with the shystiness of Edom, the deceptive nature of the serpent, of the so-called white man. You have to deal with it. You have to deal with it. At some point in your life. So whether it's having a so-called birth certificate, having a driver's license, your insurance, your so-called lease agreements, property taxes, your allodial title, all that has to be from Esau. You know what? Sales tax, that's another kicker. And then you also have eminent domain. So at any point in time, they could bulldoze your property and say, you can't live here no more, man. Here's a check. You gotta bounce. That's just what happens. And there's nothing the courts can do, man. There's nothing the courts can do because the judges don't have a backbone. They just go along with the program that the elites have set. So you have to be aware, man, that the system is going to crumble. It's even crumbling. You can't depend on the court system to back you up. You've seen that with the immigration courts. You've seen what the immigration judges are doing, because they are a major key factor in all this chaos that ICE is causing. All right, they are a major factor. So 2 Ezra chapter 15 verse 17 says, "A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able." All right, so you're gonna have to deal with the restrictions and chaos and frustration of our society. of the elites wanting to stay relevant. All these problems you have in society stems from the elites, man. They want to hold on to power. They don't want to see the will of the Lord happen. They're upset that prophecy is coming to pass because as they move closer to accomplishing their so-called goals, in other words, the Lord is already, making sure that their goals are at the edge of the cliff. That's where it is, man. His goals are at the end of the plank. So the Most High is walking the elites towards the edge of the plank, and they think that they are advancing in everything they want to achieve. So that's how delusional they've become. All right. So you just have to see the irrational behavior of the elites. So the Most High is the ultimate chess player. He is giving the elites over to a reprobate mind that they can do nothing but self-destruct. All right. So it's just one thing you have to deal with. And then verse 18, 2nd Esdras 15:18, for because of their pride the cities shall be troubled. All right. So that's why you have protests, man, around the whole world, even in the cities and the countries, man. When people see ice, they start blowing their whistle, screaming and yelling. Cell phones come out. It's nothing the media can do. Journalists get attacked. Sheriffs get insulted. Officers get attacked with pepper spray, tear gas, and all that stuff. So it's just part of the collapse of Esau's system. It says the houses shall be destroyed and men shall be afraid. So that's just what happens, man. They say a man's home is his castle. Yeah, well, when the castle is destroyed, that's what it is, man. The end of Babylon, has to be fulfilled. Okay. And then it says what? And men shall be afraid. So the courage of man is going to evaporate, man. So you have to be aware that the courage men used to have is just going to sink to the bottom of the ocean, man. So the book of Amos, chapter 3, verse 6 says, shall a trumpet be blown in the city and the people not be afraid? Shall there be evil in a city and the Lord hath not done it? So the evil that we see is basically the Lord's desire to separate his elect from the system of Babylon. All right, so it's basically the trumpet or call for the elect to awaken out of slumber and prepare themselves to be separated psychologically from Esau's society. So the signs of separation is growing, and sooner or later, man, the Most High will have to give us that courage to overcome our fears, to overcome the stigma of not being able to participate in Esau's so-called agenda of deception. So that's the point of this lesson. The times of prosperity is going to be altered, and you're going to have to let it go, man. The prosperity of this world, you have to let it go and focus more on your salvation, man, because you can't allow the serpent to beguile you of your inheritance. The kingdom of heaven is worth more than the kingdom of Esau. All right, so you have to make a choice that's befitting of your salvation. So that's it. I brought to put up some more lesson, and shalom.